Welcome back. You watched the Daily Rundown with me, Fiona Fox. I have the lovely Nina Gilligan and the very lovely David Semple helping me out this evening as well. Now, just before we went to the break, we were talking about Jeremy Corbyn and what's going on in the Labour Party in general. David, I think we were
you had something you were saying.
Was I? I think I was.
You see, you spent the whole break talking about it as well.
I was just saying that.
It's hard not to talk during the break because you save all the good stuff for the actual show.
I know, and
we
were having a good old chinwag, weren't we? But I think it's like the Marie Celeste now, isn't it? In the cabinet for there's not many of them left.
I think you mentioned that Jeremy Corbyn was the first leader for a while, or the first candidate when he went.
That felt authentic.
That felt authentic,
and then I think that's what the young people got behind.
Yeah.
And the joining people, but you were making the point in the break that he comes across as an activist, or he is an activist.
Yeah, he comes across as a professional protester. And he appeals to protesters and activists. He's like that. As soon as he becomes leader of the party, he goes off on a protest somewhere. And that's what I feel is his strength in politics, protesting. Now, Michael Foot used to protest against CND, but do you remember Michael Foot? You're too young, but you've studied Michael Foot. Now, Michael Foot, though, was a brilliant, sharp man. He kept that Labour government from 76 to 79 in power quite ruthlessly as the leader of the House of Commons with the Lib Lab
So
pact.
is your argument that Corbyn we've seen it, haven't we, over the last 2 days, just can't keep enough people together? He
doesn't
just can't lead the party.
And that was a comment, wasn't it, by MPs today as well, that he divides rather than unites the party.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
and I'm devastated because I really do think he's going to go, and I love him.
Well, he has said he'll stand again.
Yeah, I do.
Corbyn will win if he's allowed to stand. I think he'll win if it goes to the vote.
Do you feel? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he will, unless he decides to stand down.
I think he will stand down. I didn't think he would a couple of days ago. Now I think he's on. I think he's on the verge. Stephen Watson came back from Glastonbury and he thought it'd be, he basically said to him, "Come on, this is going to be too tough." He kind of ushered him towards the door.
Right. How do you feel about the comments saying that Jeremy Corbyn didn't handle the entire referendum the right way?
I think he's been scapegoated.
Scapegoat, right?
Yeah, completely scapegoated. There's plenty of other MPs on the left who weren't maybe campaigning that hard in their own constituencies and certainly lost their own traditional vote within their own constituencies. So I just think there wasn't. Maybe that is due to Corbyn not bringing them together, but I don't think there was a good campaign on the whole by the Labour Party.
On the whole, actually, in the last couple of weeks, I thought he came out, I mean, he's Brexit, but he came out supporting the party policy quite clearly and quite well. I don't think he was a bad campaigner. I think he did it, and for him it was tough because like Foot and Tony Benn, he didn't agree with the whole thing.
I think he was ambivalent about Europe, isn't he?
He's trying to keep unity, yeah. And I think
Corbyn. Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see who would be the leader of the party, because I actually think there's only one man capable of it at the moment, and that's Hilary Benn, who could probably unite the party. I'm not a fan of Hilary Benn at all. I don't like his politics, but I think he could unite the Labour Party.
Do you think because he's got that elder statesman feel rather than somebody like Andy Burnham who feels kind of...
He's young, isn't he? And he wants to be mayor of Manchester.
But then Blair was like that, wasn't he?
New Labour.
Well, it's hard to, there's Blairite and then there's left, right. How much are they different from each other? How much is it? I mean, I don't think the split in the party is that big. I think Blair was what you call corporatist.
Yeah.
And so was David Cameron. And I'm against corporatism myself, big government and big... I'm against that personally myself. And I think that's what Blair was.
It's the nicest Tory I've ever met.
David?
Yeah.
Wow, there you go, David. That's a lovely compliment.
Well, I'm not a yes man. I mean, I am myself more on the right. I would gladly elect Liam Fox as our leader, but I think it's going to be Boris.
Do you think, I think coming back to what you were saying though, the whole thing with what Labour are doing now and whether it has been a bit of a coup against, isn't it disastrous for Labour that there was a moment where they could have united and kind of come together and formed a real opposition because there might be a general election soon. Yeah. And they've crumbled.
Imploded, yeah.
I think they're going to come back together again, both parties, quite quickly.
You would feel confident for the two parties, would you?
For both parties to come back together
you're
again.
a lot more positive than I was expecting, David.
Well, but most Tories, if you ask them, I mean, they're just going to come out with cliches, aren't they? I studied British, even when I was in high school in Canada. I used to read all these, because my mother was English, I used to read all these books about British politics. So I read Wilson's memoirs, the Crossman Diaries. You should read that, that's amazing. I'm a big admirer of Dick Crossman. I knew all the candidates who ran against Jim Callaghan, who they were, the guy, Anthony, Anthony, the guy who died, who brought in the Education Act 65. And then Anthony Benn and Roy Jenkins and Dennis Healy. I knew all about those politicians. So I've followed every generation forward. And Tory and Labour, I think this generation is smaller than the generation they have in the 70s. And now the 70s is seen as an unsuccessful decade. It was a hard time for Britain. But yet some of those politicians they had back then had more statesman-like insight, great things about them than some of the small people we've got today. Because I think both parties, since the era of Major and what's his name, Tony Blair, they want yes men. And
I think when we got Corbyn, that was a reaction against, we didn't want a
what you're talking about.
Leader.
Yeah. So it's quite sad actually that's come around to this just in September as well. But it's interesting to hear as well that you feel that he might go back in if it comes around. So I have faith in both.
Yeah, and I really hope David's right.
The Tories want him to be re-elected because they figured we'll win in 2020 running against him, because the next election cannot be before 2020 unless 2/3 of the Parliament vote for an election. And the Prime Minister has lost his power to select an election. Thanks to David Cameron and Nick Clegg, every Prime Minister had the right to, with the Queen's permission, call an election anytime they wanted.
And they got rid of that, didn't they?
And then Nick Clegg and David Cameron came along and destroyed that. And then they give us 5-year parliaments. I think they should be 3 years.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks very much for that. I think we'll put Brexit aside for a little while and move over to something else. Thank you so much for your opinions there. Unhappy, obviously, we're not going to an actual fabulously happy story. A crash at a theme park has resulted in serious injuries. Police said the crash happened after 5 gondolas on a ride called the Tsunami roller coaster detached from the rails at a bend and fell to the ground. There were 9 passengers on board, 2 19-year-olds and 7 children. The park has revealed that the Tsunami ride had been closed on Saturday due to a minor electrical fault, but said it was fully operational when the park opened on Sunday. In March, when the park's Tornado roller coaster ground to a halt 20 feet in the air, there was panic then as well, but no fatalities. It's been over a year since the horrific crash at Alton Towers. And this is a very serious incident that's taken place just outside of Glasgow. We've fairgrounds, carnivals, all that kind of stuff. We've all grown up on these. I mean, this is starting to feel very scary to me now. Do you not think should there be like a look at general regulations in this area now? Do you think? I mean, you've got kids. Is this something? Would this put you?
Well, my daughter was due to go to Alton Towers as part of a school trip at the end of term, and she's not going. Yeah, because she's too frightened.
She herself is too frightened.
She's too frightened to go, and secretly, as a mum, where you're secretly thrilled. I don't want to over-egg it. I think it's a little bit probably like anything that involves mechanical things. Cars, aeroplanes. Something is bound to go wrong at some point, and it's a calculated risk. But there has been these 2 big incidents now, hasn't there, in the news, which will focus people's fear. I think.
I was going to say, it's at least bad publicity. I mean, David, are you a fan of roller coasters?
I went to Blackpool about 1997 with some friends, and I'd never been there before. It was a fascinating trip, and there was this thing that kept going up and down, and it frightened me because I'm afraid of those things. I used to ride in the Wild Mouse at the Canadian National Exhibition when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I liked the roller coaster, but then I saw this big roller coaster in Blackpool. It was a huge thing.
I think they've got more extreme, haven't they? That's part of the problem.
Have they? But I kind of feel like even if they've got extreme these days, there should be less room for error. Though I kind of feel like when you're talking about even like when we were growing up. It just seemed like it should have been scarier there. You know, you'd see a carnival go up in a day. There was nothing there yesterday.
They still do it where I live. It goes up in the morning and they're all on the rise by the night, and it's held together with pot rivets. And I'm like, how is it not falling apart?
How is that safe?
Yeah.
You'd wonder. So when these kind of things happen, especially at big main parks like Alton Towers, I feel like there shouldn't be any room. There shouldn't be any allowance, to be honest, like for human error or anything like that. Obviously, you know, that's very hard to achieve.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should there be some kind of a boycott? Should there be a proper review into the safety of these
Maybe
fairgrounds?
there should be. Maybe we should halt the rides until we've come up with something to regulate more stringently about safety.
I'm sure the regulation's there.
Whether
but I think the people running that place might not be doing all the things in the health and safety legislation.
I think you're right, because they've said, particularly about this park, I don't want to get in trouble, but there's been something like 8 serious incidents in 5 years, or there's been 8 incidents at that park.
And so, I mean, I have to say, I was never a fan, even as a kid. I was just a terrible scaredy cat.
I'm awful.
It just goes against everything, doesn't it? I mean, you're up in the air, it's going fast, you're upside down. Why?
It's not thrilling. It's terrifying. I dodgems. That's what I'll do.
Yeah, and
I like a dodgem.
I don't know what a dodgem is.
The little cars,
bumper cars.
I thought it was little candies.
It's the physical sort of equivalent of what we're doing today. Little bumps.
Oh, you mean like
and they've got electric.
They called something else.
What do you call them? We call
bumper cars.
We call them the bumper cars. In Ireland. I could stretch to the waltzers.
Could you do the waltzers? I don't know. I only enjoyed it when the man used to jump on the back and give you
He'd give you an extra
and
spin.
you'd be like that.
No, Nina, the safety of that.
I know.
In between them, just jumping on some young lads.
And I wonder if there
give this gang of girls an extra spin.
I wonder if there is that as well, about our kind of expectations, like you're saying, of health and safety, and what's happened is terrible.
Of course.
But are really high.
Yeah.
I mean, we just used to caution to the wind when I was little. You just used to go off on your own. Think about it.
That's why kids walk out the door at 9 o'clock, they wouldn't come back till 6 o'clock. Nobody would be looking for them, no mobiles. But I mean, obviously it's not the same thing. Obviously that's a hugely tragic incident, but it would be interesting to see what kind of knock-on effect it will have, especially as we're going into the summer holidays. I mean, this is theme park peak season.
There are some like hardened theme park goers, aren't there? After the tragedy in Alton Towers, they were interviewing people who were going, no, we're going to go tomorrow because it's going to be quiet.
Yeah.
You know, they just, some things will just not put anybody off.
That's madness, but it's the truth as well. But we'll be interested to see what kind of effects that this one has.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much. We're going to go for another break. When I come back, I'm going to be joined by some of the women from WASPI, and you'll find out what that's all about in just a few minutes. See you soon.